All right, everyone. So again, we are on page 415, lesson 19, session 1. We're going to talk about scaled graphs. So what we're going to be doing in this entire lesson, lesson number 19, is we're going to put your knowledge and skill of multiplication to work here in being able to what we call interpret or read graphs, scaled graphs to be very specific. We're going to tell you about all the parts of a scaled graph and what it means. All right? I am at the top of page 415. You are going to see where my purple pen is pointing. Here we go. Ron keeps track of the points scored by his teammates during a basketball game. He records his data in the picture graph shown. How many points did each teammate score? So friends, my students know that the first thing we do when we read word problems is we close read them. We need to understand what this question is asking. If you do not understand what the question is asking, stop. Do not proceed until you know what you need to do. So I'm taking out my purple pen and I'm going to close read it this time. So Ron's keeping track of points. He's playing basketball. He's recording his data in this picture graph right over here. The question is asking me, how many points did each teammate score? Now, friends, take a look at this word right here, and I'm circling it. Each teammate. Each teammate. That is what the question is asking me. All right, so I already know I have Alan, Kate, Gary, and May. So I need to get 4 sets of data here. 1 for each teammate. All right, so I want you to take a closer look at this graph. It's a special graph. It's what we call a picture graph. Why? Because there are, in fact, pictures. These pictures stand for something. And down here at the bottom of every picture graph, you're going to see this. It's called a key. Not the kind that you use in a door. There are different types of keys. This key tells us how to read the pictures. I'm going to say that again. The key tells us how to read the pictures. So it is telling us that each basketball stands for 2 points. Each basketball stands for 2 points. This is how we are going to read this picture graph. All right, so going back to my close read, how many points did each teammate score? Well, my students know I like to break things apart. I like to help my brain. I just like to help my brain. My students also know that I like using lots of color because colors help my brain. So I'm going to break it apart. Here we go. I need to find Alan. That's my first. And then I need to find Kate. And then I need to find Gary. And then I need to find May. All right, I'm breaking this apart one step at a time. So Alan has 1 ball. Great. I'm not done though. Alan has 1 ball. Awesome. So in order for me to answer the question of points, I'm going to take that 1 ball and I'm going to multiply it by 2 points. Why? Because that's what the ball stands for. 1 ball, 2 points. So it looks like Alan scored 2 points. Great, I got one done. Kate, well, Kate has 3 balls. Awesome. So how many points did Kate score? Well, I can take those 3 balls and multiply it by 2 points because again, each ball stands for 2 points. So Kate scored 6 points. Awesome. Gary has 5 balls. How many points did Gary score? Well, we have these 5 balls times 2 points. That's 10 points. Great, almost done. May has 4 balls. So how many points did May score? Well, 4 of those balls times 2 points, and that's 8 points. So the interpretation or the reading of this picture graph says this: Alan scored 2 points. Kate scored 6 points. Gary scored 10 points, and May scored 8. Again, that is the interpretation. That is how we read the picture graph. Some students like to go up and put numbers to the pictures. Could you do that? Definitely. So I could say quickly, Alan, that's 2 points. And then Kate, that's 6 points. Gary, that's 10 points. May, that's 8 points. So friends, could I go on a test question, for example, a little bit deeper? I definitely could. I could ask you lots of questions about this particular game. I could ask you how many points did each teammate score? I could say, how many points did all 4 teammates score all together? I could have you compare different teammates who scored more, Kate or Gary. I could say, how many more points did May score than Alan? I could say, how many more points did Gary score than Kate and Alan scored together? So friends, the big idea here is that I could ask you many, many questions about this picture graph and about this key, right? This is why the close read skill is so incredibly important. Do not proceed until you know what I'm asking you. I didn't ask you how many they scored altogether. I didn't ask you to compare. What I needed to know was what each teammate scored. And here it is. There's the breakdown. All right, friends. In a moment, we are going to proceed to page 416. I'll give you just another couple of seconds to get that written down. All right, let us proceed to page 416. So up at the top, Under that green connect, we're going to look back a little bit on the problem in the picture graph that we just solved. And it's asking how many points did each teammate score, but now you need to explain it. Because again, friends, as I've told my students in 3rd grade, we are not about just the solution, we're about the why. Why? Why did this happen? So here are some notes for you, as we've just explained. The key tells me each ball stands for 2 points. And do I want you to write this down? Yes, I do. The key tells me each ball stands for 2 points. I multiply 2 by the number of balls shown for each teammate to find their total points. This is where multiplication facts are important, friends. So again, Alan, 2 points. 1 ball times 2. Kate, 6 points. 3 balls times 2. Gary, 10 points. 5 balls times 2. May, 8 points. 4 balls times 2. Again, that key is telling you each ball stands for 2 points. You multiply 2 by the number of balls shown for each teammate. I'm going to give you a minute to get all that written down. I know it's a lot, but it's very important.
Mrs. Hillig?
Who is speaking?
Sophia Foster.
Sophia, please do not speak out in the Zoom. When we come back together, you can ask the question, okay? Thank you. All right, friends. Let's take a look again at this different looking graph. I want you to follow along with me. The data in a picture graph, again, our picture graph here, right with the balls. The data in a picture graph can also be shown on what we call a bar graph. A bar graph. We'll underline that. A bar graph for these data is shown. And take a look here, friends. We have the same teammates, Alan, Kate, Gary, and May, right? And we're representing points scored during the game. This is an important word, friends, the scale. The scale. We've learned about a key. Now we're going to talk about a scale for a minute. The scale on a bar graph is the difference between any 2 numbers that are next to each other. Down here, friends, here is your scale, right here. This is your scale. And the scale is the difference between the 2 numbers that are next to each other. So you can see that our scale here, it's in increments of 2. See how we go 0 to 2, and then 4, 6, 8, and 10. These are the scale numbers. These are the scale numbers. So friends, you can see, let's go back to our teammates for a moment. Let's go back to Alan, for example. Remember on our picture graph on the prior page, we talked about how Alan scored 2 points because he had a basketball, right? And that was the key. The key told us that. But take a look in here and how it's represented on the bar graph. See that too? That's like a basketball, right? We determined that Kate scored 6 points, yes? So please take a look down on the scale, you can see that that 6 points is just like those 3 basketballs. Okay? And you can see Gary had 5 basketballs, which was 10 points. You can see on the scale, 10 points. We determined that May scored 8 points, and here on the scale, you can see again, 8 points. So friends, the big idea here is that this data, the same data, is being represented in a slightly different way. But the interpretation or the reading of the data is the same. But instead of basketballs, now we're using bars. Okay? So it's asking you in question A, what is the scale of this bar graph? So friends, again, it's 2. It's 2. 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. And in question B, it's asking, what does the bar for Gary mean, and how do you know? What does it mean? Gary scored 10 points. The bar is drawn to the 10-point line. Again, Gary scored 10 points, and that bar is drawn to the 10-point line. The difference being, of course, the picture graph had Gary with 5 basketballs next to his name. The bar graph is simply the bar drawn out to 10 points, and the scale is in increments of 2. So if you were to relate this, for example, to the picture graph, instead of this 2, you'd have a basketball. Instead of this 4, you'd have 2 basketballs. Instead of this 6, you would have 3 basketballs. Instead of this 8, you would have 4 basketballs. And instead of this 10, you would have 5 basketballs. Okay? Again, friends, same data represented in a different way. All right? Now, on question C, I'm going to move my paper up just a bit. It is saying, how do the key for the picture graph and the scale for the bar graph compare? I just talked about this a few seconds ago. Explain how each helps you read a graph. Here we go, friends. And again, it's a lot of words, but they're important words. Here we go. Starting here, they are both 2. The key tells you what each symbol means, and the scale tells you the distance between the scale numbers and the graph. Each bar segment between these scale numbers is like a symbol on the picture graph. So again, going back up to the bar. So if I were to represent this data in a picture form, instead of this bar, I would have a basketball next to Alan's name. Instead of this 4, I would have 2 basketballs. Instead of this 6, I would have 3 basketballs next to Kate's name. Instead of 8, I would have 4 basketballs next to May's name. And instead of 10, I would have 5 basketballs next to Gary's name. Just like this, my friends. Just like this. This is a picture graph. This is a bar graph. The data being represented is the same. So down here at the bottom, it is saying, how are the picture graph and the bar graph alike and different in showing the same data? So friends, going back to our reading skills, right? This is where we're comparing and contrasting. This is where we're comparing and contrasting. How are they alike or comparing? How are they different or contrasting? So they both show the points scored by Ron's teammates. Both of the graphs do that. The picture graph uses little basketballs. The bar graph uses bars. So they're the same in that they represent points. They are different because one uses pictures, one uses bars. Okay? In a moment, we are going to proceed to page 417. I'm going to give you a moment to get these notes completed. All right, friends, we are going to now proceed to page 417. 417. And this is where it's the green up at the top, right? So now you're going to need to think a little bit. It says to think about what you know about data graphs. Fill in each box. Use words, numbers, and pictures. Show as many ideas as you can. This is where you're going to start. And then it's saying down here on question 2, use the graphs to answer these questions. Please be very careful about the key. Make sure you know what each of those soccer balls, for example, stands for, friends, because it's not just one vote. Read the key. On page 418, you are going to be taking a look at yet another picture graph. You're going to need to offer a solution, and you're going to need to check your work and explain it. All right, so again, pages 417, 418. This is what you are going to be working on today. Hybrid students, that will be with Mrs. Luna or independent. My students, it will be with me in breakouts, but we are going to come back together for just a moment for any last minute questions and clarification, all right?